Well, hello and welcome along. Today is very exciting because we are going to be going through creating your very first video using Davinci Resolve. Now, this is going to be an absolute beginner's guide, but by the end of it, you should know exactly how to load up Davinci Resolve, how to import your footage, how to work with that within the software, right through to completion of exporting that out and then uploading it to, say, YouTube, for example. Now, I've been editing on Davinci Resolve for some time now, probably about maybe just over a year, and I've become quite familiar with it, so hopefully I can show you a few tips and tricks to get you started really quickly so that you too can start producing video content. Now, Davinci Resolve is actually a pro level editing software, but the best news, the very best news, is that you can actually get a very good version of it for free, like 100% free. I used the free version for a very long time, but I did end up buying the full version as it was just a one-off cost and I use it for my videography business, so it made sense for me to do that. So the first thing you're going to need to do is head to the Davinci Resolve website and download the software. Follow the on-screen instructions and install it, and then open when ready. It's all pretty straightforward, but if you have any questions, just drop a note down in the comments below. I'm happy to try and help if you get stuck. So once we've opened up Resolve, you'll be greeted with this screen, and this is your project page. This is an area where you'll be able to look back and look through all of your projects once you've been using the software for a while. But what you need to do at this point is click the button at the bottom which says New Project, and give that project a name. Now, once we do that, we're now looking into the main editing area. Now, before we do anything, what we need to do is change our timeline settings. Come to this little cog down at the bottom right, and that will open up the following window. For the first time when you come in, you'll need to come to master settings and have a look at your timeline resolution. Now, mine is set for 4K. But you probably want this to be in, for example, 1080 HD, or you might actually just want to do it in 720. It's up to you. I would advise going for the full HD if you can. I'm going to leave mine in 4K because that's generally how I edit. The timeline frame rate needs to match the frame rate of your footage. If you've recorded or if you're streaming, for example, in 30 frames per second, you need to change this to match. So you can see there's 30 frames per second. Just make sure this matches whatever you've captured your footage in. You'll also want to make sure that the playback frame rate matches. So I'm going to set them both to 30. You might want to set them to 60. If you're just editing a vlog, you might want that to be in 24 frames per second, as that tends to be preferred for more cinematic videography. Once you're happy with that, we can hit save. So if we look down at this bottom bar, we've got a number of items that we can choose here, and the idea is that you work from left to right all the way until you hit the deliver. So deliver is where we would go and export our footage. So what we need to do is start on the media tab, which is the one on the far left. If we give that a click, that brings us into our media pool. So this is the area where we're going to add in all of the media that we want to appear into our video. That will be any footage that you've caught from, say, a camera, any recorded clips that you may have if you're doing this Twitch highlight kind of thing, any graphics, any animations and music, sound effects, those kind of things. They all need to come into the media pool before we can then add them into our video. So the first thing we need to do is right click on this section where it says no clips in media pool, and that will give us this menu. And from in here, we can choose import media. So go ahead and find all of the footage that you want to use, all of the music, sound effects. So I'm going to select all of these things and just drop them in. If you happen to import any footage into this area and you have not changed the timeline resolution to match, it will actually ask you if you want to make that change. So if you get prompts to do that, choose yes. It will save you a little bit of a headache in the long run if you're not quite sure how to change it later. So what we have in here, we've got a sound effect here. We've got an animated intro, I've got a logo that's kind of got a green screen background on there, so there's some transparency. I've got a music track, and I've got a few videos here, which are actually my previous highlight clips, which I'm going to use to re-edit something in this example for today. So at the moment, this is all that we need to do in this screen. Nothing else. Simple, hey? So next, we can move across to the next tab at the bottom. Very recently, Davinci added this option here, which is the cut screen. The idea of the cut screen is it's an area where you can very quickly drop in all of your footage and cut everything through in the order that you've dropped your footage into here. So this is really good if you've recorded a vlog, for example, and the footage is in like a chronological order. So you can just go through it in order and chop out any bits that you don't want to include. So that's a really nice quick way of editing. If you aren't using that kind of chronological order type of video, I would just go ahead and stick with the edit tab, but that's what we're going to use today. Within the edit tab, what we can see up at the top, this is kind of our preview window. So once we start dropping footage into our timeline, things will start appearing in this window. So we'll be able to see exactly what the video would look like once it's done at that point in time. Down here at the bottom, this is our timeline, but at the moment you can see there's nothing on there. We can't really interact with it. We can't do anything. To activate it, we'd need to drop some footage into the timeline. This section up here is showing us all of our clips and all of the items that we have just pulled through into the media pool. Just take note up at the very top, you can see there are some items that are kind of highlighted as such, so the text is bright white as opposed to a grey here, and that's because these are menu items that we can toggle on and off. This is the media pool. If I click the wording media pool, it will hide it. So if it isn't there for any reason when you're in here and you want to find it, just click on media pool at the top, and that works for everything. So at the moment I've got my effects library turned on. If I want to clean that up, I can go ahead and do that. Now, Davinci does come with a number of effects, so for things such as simple titles, fusion titles are animated titles, so fusion is the name of kind of the animation tool within Davinci. You have various video transitions in here. You also have audio transitions, just simple crossfades and so on. We don't need to worry too much about these. At the moment, we'll probably just do some very simple crossfade transitions. You can create your own and download plugins, but that is of course more advanced. Another recent addition is actually a sound library. So if you wanted to add sound effects, you can actually go to browse this sound library and you can search for various sounds. Like for example, if I put bells in there, you can see there's a number of different bells that we can choose from and listen to, which is great. Now, to a point, you can kind of resize things. I've got this on a much smaller view than I normally have for the purpose of today's tutorial. But wherever you see, when you hover over the edge of something, you can grab that edge, hold down your mouse and kind of move things around to fit what you want to see there. So there is a little bit of customization. You can drag this up if you want to and so on. So make it fit whatever works for you. Now, the next thing that we're going to go ahead and do is choose our first bit of footage. I'm going to choose the little intro that I have at the beginning of all of my videos that I'm sure you will have seen. If I double click this right here, you'll notice that I've now got two windows that I'm looking at. The window on the left is a preview of the footage that I have in my media pool, and on the right hand side will be what is actually on my timeline. So within here, I could actually just drag that footage down onto the timeline, and you can see when I do that, the video is trying to be placed along with its audio, and I could just drop it in there and chop out the bits that I don't want. But we do have another option which tends to be a little bit quicker if you have a lot of footage to look through, and that is that within this area we can actually scrub through the footage in here, and then you have a couple of shortcuts that you can use on your keyboard. So you can push the I button, which will set what we call an in point, and then you can scrub a little bit further, and then you can push the O, and the O sets an out point. So now when we hover over, we get a couple of extra options. This one here will grab just the footage. This one here will grab just the audio. And if we click above, it will grab everything, but just within that little bit of time. So you can see how much smaller this is now than grabbing the whole thing. So if you imagine if you had a clip that was like an hour long, it would be a lot to drag all of that into the timeline at once. I mean, you can 100%, but you might just want to grab the selects that you want for your video in this way. So if I send that back, and if I just say grab the audio button and pull that down, you can see now I've just got the audio, and do it again for just the footage. But in this case, what we want to do is we do actually want the full clip. So I will drop this in. What I can do now is grab this little kind of playhead here, and now you can see when I scrub through that it's now showing what is actually on the timeline and what will be eventually output. Another shortcut for you is if you want to just play the footage, you can hit your spacebar. And to stop, you can push the spacebar again. There are a few more shortcuts, and they are the J, K, and L keys. The L key, if you tap it once, will start playing. If you tap it again, it will play at double speed. and you can tap that multiple times to get faster and faster for scrubbing through your footage really quickly. The J key does exactly the same, but in reverse. So if I tap that once, we're playing backwards, and again, double speed. And if I just want to stop, I can push the K key. So the K kind of resets and is your stop key. So that's a nice way if you're using the J, K, and L keys just to quickly navigate through the footage. And then you can use I to grab the beginning of the clip that you want, and O to grab the end. So over time, you'll get used to using various shortcuts. I do suggest trying to learn them from the very beginning, as it'll make your life easier in the long run. So we've got our first little bit of footage in there. So now we need to start building up and adding more footage. If I double click again, we'll see I have my highlights here already nicely edited together using Davinci Resolve. Let's say that I want this jump scare section here. Okay, so I'm going to use I to select the start. I'm going to push L to start playing through. And then I'm going to push K. So I just want that little bit. And then if I push O, you can see that's now added the in and the out point. Now I can grab the whole clip and drag it down and drop it right next to my footage here. So that will be the first bit that plays after my intro. Just note that as I was moving things around on here, can you see that they're moving independently from each other? So if I'm not careful, I could make my footage be out of sync. We don't want that. So something that I suggest turning on is the magnet and also the link tool. So these little bits here, it's like a magnet, and that is your snapping tool. And then here you have linked selection. So that will make sure that your video and audio will stay linked together. So if I highlight both of those, click the link, now you see when I grab one, they stay nicely linked. And if I use the snapping tool, so that little magnet on that same footage, you see how it kind of snaps in? So I don't have to worry about it kind of clipping over my footage unless I'm being quite aggressive with it. So you might find times when you need to turn those off, but when you're starting out, they're really helpful tools to stop you doing anything too weird. There's nothing worse than when you've accidentally unlinked your footage from the audio and it's slightly out of sync. So just be wary of that one. So now that we've got our first little clip, we can continue to look through here. So I can just click back up on here. You can see that the stream highlights section there, the title of the clip, turned red. So I know that that's what I'm working with. I can continue to play through using my shortcuts J, K, and L. But let's go a little bit further. Just a little clip from here. So I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to do the I for my in, and then I'm going to do O for the out. Exactly the same. Grab that and drop it in. So we can continue doing this all the way until we've built up all of the clips that we want to appear. So I'll go to the stream highlights number 2, and we'll do the same. We'll get another couple of clips from here, out there. Drop that down. This is not going to be the best edit. And I'm just going to continue working until we've got all of the bits that we want. So this is super fun. We'll have that. And we'll drop that in. So now let's have a look at what we've created so far. Basically what I did then is I've clicked down towards the bottom and I've pushed the space bar, and that's allowing me to then play through what's on the timeline. So we can see this clip, then jumps into this clip. There we go. So we've got a few clips together now. So something else that you'll notice in those actual clips is that I added various text effects. If you did want to add some text on top of here, you can basically build these up as layers. So your video 1 is kind of your bottom layer, but you can see I've got a video 2 at the top here. So let's say that I want some text to appear somewhere here. So you can see I had that run. Let's add a new text on top because we don't want run again. We've already got that from the previous video that I made. So what we can do is we can come down to our titles here on the bottom left, and in here I can choose, there are various kind of, like I said, the fusion titles, the animated ones. Have a play around with them if you want, but I'm not a fan, to be honest. I prefer the more plain looking stuff and to make things look how I would want by tweaking them myself. But what we'll do is we'll just grab the text one, and you can see if we can drop that up here on top, and if you see on the right hand panel, you can see that that is now showing a title there. So if I want to resize this title, because that's quite long, I kind of just want it to pop up before the run section. So I could take my playhead back to when I want it to disappear. If I hover over this, you can see that as the mouse moves around, I get different cursors as I move around here. If I don't go all the way to the edge, it gives me this clipping tool. So if I hold down my left mouse button, you can see it turns green on the right hand side. That means I can now bring this in and clip it. And if I have the snapping, like link thing still on, it will snap to the playhead. So that's a really nice, quick, easy way to edit that. So if I play this little bit through, you can see the title up here, then disappears once that run pops up. Now, if I want to edit what is actually in that text box, I just need to click here, and then I need to go up to an area at this top right that is called the inspector. And this here is where I can go and edit whatever that's going to say. So we can say, send help. That sounds like something I would probably say. And just as you would expect, you can go ahead and change things such as the fonts and whatever in there, and that will be applied. And we'll leave it at that for now. If you want to hide this away again, just click the inspector and that will bring you back to your previous view. So the inspector is kind of where you can go and change the attributes of anything that you apply. So we will keep coming back to the inspector. So we can see that change has been made and it disappears, as you would expect. Now, you might be struggling to kind of see what you're working with, so if you feel that you need to zoom in or zoom out, there is a little area here where you can do exactly that. So I can zoom into the timeline, which gives me a bit of a better view. There's a number of options here as well that are to do with how you can kind of chop up and move around your timeline. I generally have the selection mode selected and I use shortcuts on my keyboard. But if you just want to use kind of the trim edit mode, the shortcut for that is T on the keyboard. There's also a dynamic trim mode, which you can use W to select that. And the blade edit mode is, to be honest, the one that I use the most. So this is kind of your cut tool, but I just push B on the keyboard to apply a cut. So let's just say that we want to cut out this section here. So I can select the bit of the footage that I want to cut. I can put my playhead onto the section where I want the cut to be, and I can go and hit Control and B. So that's my shortcut for applying a cut. So you can see there what it's done is it split that footage into here. What you can also do is you can actually change from the pointer and grab that blade tool, and you can just move it to exactly where you want to apply that cut. So let's say we want to also cut here. Now what I can do, because I've got cuts here and a piece of footage in the middle that I potentially want to get rid of, I could delete that out. So there's two ways in which you can do that. I can click here and I can push delete on the keyboard. What that will do is it will automatically delete that piece away and close in the gap for me. So that's super, super handy. But sometimes you don't want it to do that. Sometimes you want it to remove that, but to leave a space there to enable you to put something else in the space. So if I use Control and Z, that will undo that change that I just did. This time, if I select it, I can hit the backspace and you can see that's deleted it and it's left the gap there for me. So if I wanted to drop that text in or another piece of footage in there, then I can do that without worrying about the timeline closing in. If I've pushed the wrong one, in this case, I do want it to close the gap, I can just click into the empty space and you can see it highlights it, and then I can hit the delete key and that will close it for me as well. So initially, all you're going to be doing in here, until you get familiar with the software, is adding in your various clips, cutting them to size, and maybe adding a few transitions between. So let's say that we want a transition to appear between here and here. So if we want to add a transition, we just need to come to video transitions on the left, and you can choose from whatever you want in here. So let's put something really, really awful in here. A nice heart, why not? Because that seems like it will make loads of sense. So we can just literally drop on the edge of where we want that to appear. Zoom right in. Now we can see this white box that is falling around each side of the footage. So again, if you come to the edge here, you can see we've got this little arrow. If we hold our left mouse button down, it turns it red, and then we can drag this transition out to be as long or as short as we want, crossing over the two bits of footage. Here we go. Look at that beautiful heart. In all honesty, what you're probably going to want to do is just maybe use, say, like a crossfade or a blur dissolve, something like that. So if you do want to change it, you can grab whichever one you want to change it to and just drop it on top, and it will keep the timing of the previous one. So there's your crossfade transition over there. So really, really simple. Now, something that I'm a fan of is having some funky music in the background. If we want to do that, you'll notice at the bottom, we do also have extra audio tracks. I have a audio track here called Young and Free, and I can just go and drop that into my second audio track. So now when we play, we can hear our music as well. Just as a note there, just be careful with the audio levels and make sure they're not too loud. On the far right hand side you do have this mixer, and each of these has its own kind of level, so you can just grab the levels and just drag them down if you need to. But what you can also do for all of the levels is there is a line within each of these audio tracks. So if I click on this one here, and can you see when I hover over the middle here, I get the up and down arrow. If I hold my mouse, I can actually take that volume down, and I normally have my volume for music very, very quiet, about -30 there. A really good level for any kind of speaking audio is around -10 decibels. Keep that in mind if you've got any kind of talking head stuff or if there's any audio on there where you're speaking. A quick little tip: once you've got all of your audio in for your clips, I can highlight these clips here. I can right click on the audio section and I can choose this option, which is normalize audio levels. And within here, I can set a target level. So you can see mine's defaulted to -10 because this is what I always use it for, is to make sure that my speech audio is at a good level. I can choose, do I want that to be relative or independent? So you can see I've got 5 clips selected there. If I choose independent, it will make sure that the audio is relative, independent in each of them, to 10 decibels. If it's relative, it will compare across all 5 of those clips. So what I'm going to do is choose independent because I want each of them to be averaged out around -10. Choose normalize, and you can see how that got bigger. So it's boosted that volume up a little bit there. Now you can go ahead and add pretty much as many audio and video tracks in as you like, but you may find that you actually run out of space on here when you do that. So if you do need to add some more, you can just right click on the audio area here and choose add tracks, and you can choose what type of track. If it's just going to be for verbal audio, then you can choose mono, that's a single track. Anything else, you might want that to be stereo. So stereo enables you to have different levels in each side of, say, a headphone or each side of a speaker. If you're unsure, choose mono. That'll make sure that the same level of audio is always played through both sides of whatever you're listening through. You can see now I can scroll down and I've got my audio 4, and we can do exactly the same up here for the video, so I can choose to add an extra video track if I need one. If I ever want to protect any of these rows of which I'm editing on, so let's say that I've dropped my music here and I want to make sure it doesn't move, you do have an option on the left here to choose lock, and you can see that's grayed out. I can still play, it's still very much there, we can hear it, but it's going to prevent me from making any changes to that. So I'm trying to move it, can't do anything. If I grab the clipper thing, can't do anything to it, it's protected. So that's well worth doing, just to make sure that you don't accidentally cut bits out of your audio when you're making your changes up here. So let's just say that we're at the very end and we're happy with what we've created. We've got our little cross dissolve there. I mean, this is a terrible edit, I'm not going to lie, but you know, for the purpose of today, it'll be fine. So let's just say when we get to that point, we actually want to fade out this ending here. So if we click onto this footage, and you see that in the top right corner, a little box has appeared. If you grab that with your left mouse and slide that across, you get this fade out, this line here. So if we play that, we're now fading out. And you can actually do that at the beginning as well of that clip. So you see when you hover over, there's another one here. But the last bit that I want to add now that that has faded out is just my logo popping up onto the screen. And so I have that up here, my little logo, and I can drop this down and extend it out so it's a little bit longer. I just need to zoom in a touch there. So that's a bit big, it's a little bit obnoxious. So what we can do is once we've selected this, we can go up to our inspector, and this time I can just use the zoom tool and I can bring that down to the size that I want it to be. If I wanted to just quickly grab it and move it around, I can come to this little box here and choose transform. And that will give me the option just to hold it, move it around, and to also grab these here. So that might be something that you prefer doing there, just to make those quick changes. Now, if I want to do the same again and fade that in, I can grab those little bits at the top and fades in and fades out. So the last bit that we'll do is we'll just cut the end of the music off. So if I select that audio track, I'm going to use my shortcut Control and B to do that. And then I'm going to select this bottom bit here and I'm just going to choose delete to get rid of the rest of that. And we can just apply a fade out on the music as well by just grabbing that little corner and fading out. And there it goes. So yeah, this isn't the cleanest edit, but it'll work for today. As you can see, I'm not even wearing my headphones, so I have no idea what it sounds like, so I'm sorry if it's awful. If we were happy with that, and that was our highlight video, and we were thinking, yep, that's it, job done, we want to go ahead and upload that, you would actually just come to this end section here, which is the little rocket, which is basically your export page. Just so that you're aware, I'll let you know what these are. So we have a Fusion tab. Fusion is the area where you go and create animations and such. We're not touching that today. It is quite complicated, but it's incredibly powerful. So we might cover that in a future tutorial. We have the color tab, which is a very, very powerful color grading tool. Within here, you can go ahead and change entire colors and be very, very specific. So for example, in my little logo that you see, I could potentially change the blue to be green or red or something like that. But again, we won't be mentioning too much about that today. There's an area here that is called Fairlight, and this is your audio mixing area. When you get more confident, you might want to come in and potentially add things such as de-essers, de-hummers, and echo, and all kinds of stuff, even pitch correction to your audio. So Davinci Resolve gives you absolutely everything you need to edit just the most basic video, all the way up to movie quality. Davinci Resolve's color grading tool was actually used to color grade The Martian, the movie. That's how powerful it is, and it's a free tool, which is just mind-blowing. But we don't need to worry about any of that today. We're going straight to this area, the little rocket, which is the Deliver tab. When you're ready to go ahead and export this footage, just check on here that this little grey marker at the top is covering the whole of your footage, because you can actually choose just to export a little section if you didn't want to do the whole thing, and you can just grab that and pull it into where you want it to be. So just make sure it's the whole thing in this example. Now, fortunately, there are some really, really handy presets. So if you're just uploading to YouTube, you can go ahead, click the YouTube drop down and select at which resolution. So for me, because I did this in 4K, I can choose the 4K option. You might want to use the 1080p. So select that one if it's the case. But I would suggest whatever you do, certainly if it's for YouTube, is that you make one little change in here. And that is that you change the format from QuickTime to MP4. You'll see that the audio codec changes automatically, but the rest you shouldn't need to worry about. Just go ahead and give it a name and choose the location that you want this to be saved in. There is an option to upload directly to YouTube, but I've certainly never done that, but you can if you want to. Of course, you can do custom settings if you need to, but I would strongly advise when you're just starting out to stick to some of these defaults in here. So once you've done that, just choose this button here, which is Add to Render Queue, and you'll see it's dropped it up here onto the right-hand side. So it's added it into a queue, but it's not going to do anything until you choose Start Render. Once you start rendering, you can't actually work on anything else in here. You might want to just set the queues going, and then maybe potentially once you're done for the day, then start to render, or leave them to render overnight. If it's just a short clip, then you know it's not going to take very long. But if you've got something that's 2 or 3 hours long in here that you've been working on, like an actual movie, then you would probably want to have this rendering when you're not using the PC to let it go ahead and do that. In this case, it's super short, so it's not going to take long at all. So we can go ahead and hit Start Render. And there we go, we can see that one completed in 22 seconds, and that was at 4K, so that's not bad going. Now, the speed that it will render and how the system performs will be heavily based on what your computer setup is. If you are having issues with scrubbing through, if it's jumping around and it's difficult, drop me a message and I'll tell you a way in which you can make that play better for you if you're maybe running a lower spec computer. I do have a solution for you, and I might do a video on it in the future if you ask for it. And that is it. Our video is now produced. Find that video and play through and just make sure that everything looks like I hoped it would, considering that I chose to edit it that way, so hopefully it does. You can see the text that we added, all the cuts that we made. And this is definitely not my finest work. Imagine if it is. Imagine if this is the best video I've ever edited. And that's it. That's now ready to be uploaded to YouTube, and that is job done. So this one was a pretty long video. There was quite a lot to it, but I hope that you found it really useful. There's a lot more that we can go into here. I tried to cover the basics, but also just giving you a taste of the actual power of this tool, of Davinci Resolve for a free software. It's absolutely phenomenal, and I would recommend anybody using this, even just for basic video editing. You never know if you will get that bug for editing, and you might want to do it more professionally. And Davinci DaVinci Resolve is recognized as a very good editor, so it would be a really good one to learn if you actually think that maybe editing videos is something that you want to do as a job in the future. And if you do decide to give making your own videos a go using this tutorial, do let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you and also see what you've created. If you have any suggestions for future videos, if you would like a more advanced Resolve tutorial, to be honest, this software is massive, so I am likely going to be doing lots of different tutorials on all of the different functions within here. If you do want to see those in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you can catch up with me in the future when I release those videos. So if you've got any questions about anything that we've looked at today, you can always come talk to me on my Twitch. I stream on there every Wednesday, Friday and Sunday. I will drop all of the details for ways that you can contact me in the description, and I'll also drop all of the links for where you can download DaVinci and everything that we've looked at today. So I hope that hasn't blown your mind too much today, but that is it for now, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.